Hey everyone, thanks for joining us tonight on NEA Report. It's Stan Morris along with you. I want to let y'all know that our camera stuff is going to be fixed and we will be looking back at you live once again very soon. Just a heads up, yes, that's my notification. Yeah, I'm live. But also, our camera has not been available to us because the live streaming technology had a bug in it. We wanted to update you and let you know that hopefully that will be fixed by the time the week is over. We've been working closely with the folks at Livestream to get that fixed, and so we will have our camera back on and again soon. A lot of you have been asking where my face is. It's still here. We're going to cover the news now on NEA Report as everybody begins to join the live stream. Thank you and hello to everyone in chat today. It's 3 o'clock in Northeast Arkansas. First up tonight, let's run through the headlines, tell you about an update to a story we first reported here on NEA Report, the PetSmart grooming incident that left Caitlin Weatherford's dog Ziggy maimed and in a vet's care for several days, having to go through a surgery that took several hours just to complete to reattach a skin flap that was the size of his back from one side of his belly to the other side. Well, the dog now, we know, at least according to an investigation from PetSmart, was attacked by another dog. We don't know the types of dogs officially on the record because the statement didn't say, but we will show you the statement that PetSmart sent along to media outlets, including NEA Report. It was a carbon copy statement to all the different media outlets. Apparently, they did complete their investigation, although they weren't willing to release that until we inquired. Nonetheless, they sent along a statement. We'll read it to you as follows. It says, our investigation is complete. We have confirmed this unfortunate altercation between the two dogs. We did, however, find there were policy violations in this incident, and one of the associates is no longer with PetSmart. We're continuing to support Ziggy and his family while he recovers at home. They did pick up the vet bills, according to Caitlin Weatherford, who gave several interviews to NEA Report. The dog was hospitalized on July 22nd with very serious injuries. To be honest, the dog was lucky to be alive. It was supposed to have been attacked by a Great Dane. The dog was 11 pounds. A Great Dane is about 110 pounds, probably, if you're dealing with a lighter one. They're giants. And nonetheless, the dog only had one giant, seemingly long skin flap torn back, perhaps the result of a bite that was a quick bite and yank. We don't know. What we do know is that one person is no longer with PetSmart. We also learned while talking with Caitlin Weatherford why she was so grateful to everyone who had reached out to her and offered their condolences. Her father was Lieutenant Patrick Weatherford, and he was a hero to many in this area. He passed away. He was killed in the line of duty last summer. I believe it was June 12th, and that was in Newport. He was lieutenant at the Newport Police Department. She sent a message to this reporter saying that he was her voice of reason, and doing this without him had been difficult. That was why she appreciated the entire community for showing their support to her. Happening now in Randolph County, voters are waiting to find out if they'll get to make their voices heard in the election after the Let Randolph County group has turned in almost 4,500 signatures. Wow, it's a huge number to imagine a county of 10,000 or so having to have roughly half of the county signing. However, the requirement is for 38% of the number of names on voter rolls, which is about 3,800 people, 3,861 to be exact. That's the exact requirement. They turned in 4,490. They're willing to say even that around 241 or they're not too confident about, but there should be at least, they say, 4,250 signatures. Will the Randolph County Clerk's Office agree? It's one question we have to wait and see, as that was one that ran into a few problems 2 years ago. In just a few moments, we're going to be joined by Brandon Baxter on the phone, the morning host of 107.9 K-Fine's show, and also he's a friend of Brian Christopher's, somebody that knew him very well. somebody that traveled the road with him and performed with him as a Memphis sports entertainer, so to speak. Brian Christopher Lawler passed away yesterday at age 46. He was surrounded by his family in Memphis. He had been incarcerated in jail and had made an attempt on his own life the night before. Those details are out there. They've been reported already, and as is the case with just about everyone, the ending of life can often be a tragic and sad time. We wanted tonight to focus on the things that Brian Christopher did that he did very well. The entertainment that he brought around to Northeast Arkansas, some of the smiles that he brought to the faces of you and I. We also wanted to talk about his talents. And to be realistic, we wanted to talk about how hard it must have been for somebody who clearly was giving his all. He physically looked like a statue. He worked his tail off, and at the same time, his father is maybe quite literally and sometimes, but figuratively speaking too, the king of the business, Jerry the King Lawler. How hard that must have been for Brian Christopher. Before we begin, just want to show everybody in the past several hours, WWE has acknowledged and mentioned they are saddened to learn that Brian Christopher passed away. Also, one of the executives at WWE, who is more commonly known as one of the sports entertainers and world champions, Triple H, sent out a message that both he and his wife, Stephanie McMahon, were thinking of Jerry the King Lawler and the Lawler family during this time, as are we. Tonight, we want to remember Brian Christopher Lawler, and we want to look at the positives of his life. We also, of course, acknowledge the things that happened that were negative, and we don't want anybody to discount the importance of addressing those issues in each and every one of our own lives. But that being the case, we're all human, and it's very few humans that make as big of an impact in the world as Brian Christopher did in his short 46 years on this planet. We're joined on the phone right now with somebody who was close friends with Brian Christopher, someone who worked with him for many years, and someone whom you've heard many times yourself here in Northeast Arkansas. It's my good friend Brandon Baxter from 107.9 K-Fine, also a Memphis wrestling personality for many years. Thanks for taking time to talk with us today on the eve of a tragedy that I know has affected both of us, man.
It's a sad day for all of us who knew Brian Christopher, and for the people from NEA Report who watch and listen and pay attention to your posts on NEAReport.com. It's just sad because, Brian was a guy who came right through our area, through Northeast Arkansas, and was a part of the fabric of the wrestling community in this whole area. And one of the things I noticed, Sam, when I posted on my Facebook page, I don't know if I'd call it a tribute, but kind of some thoughts that just came flowing out this morning, were the people who came after me and said, man, I met Brian at so-and-so place and he was awesome. Or, man, Brian was great with my kids. And I love hearing those stories. And if we can remember the guy, the man, Brian Christopher Lawler, and think about what a special, unique individual he was, that's a reason that I think it's so important for us to get these great stories on Brian out.
There's this photo that I'm showing right now of your little buddy, your son Kai, and Brian Christopher, and it's just kind of embodies exactly what you're talking about. He showed up to so many events here in Northeast Arkansas, whether it would be a wrestling show at the Earl Bell, or whether it might be something that was on, Red Wolf Boulevard or Stadium Boulevard at one of the auto places, and a special ring set up out there on a hot summer day. You could catch Brian Christopher in Jonesboro on any given time, and I did one particular time when you and I were working together back in the day. And he was so cool. Like, he was just so nice, and yet we did a radio hit, and he turned on Brian Christopher, the character. It turned on just like that. It was incredible.
I think that was what was so much fun about Brian, is that character, even the one he played on WWE TV, it wasn't very far from who he truly was. Because Brian was that bigger-than-life personality, and he was like that from a very young age. I know people who knew Brian. I didn't meet him until he was probably, I guess, about 24. But, even as a kid, you hear these stories about Brian and bouncing around the Mid-South Coliseum and wanting to be like his dad. And I'll never forget that day, because the picture that you're showing is one from DQ. Brian had come over, and we were doing a WWE giveaway, and Brian was going to be the former WWE star you could come by and meet and sign up for the tickets. And we had a few minutes of downtime there where my wife and son and I got to sit with Brian and kind of talk about the old days, because wrestlers do that. We get together, we talk about the old days and the stories, and we laugh.
Sure.
But the most special thing wasn't just being there with me and Brian. It was watching how Brian was with Kai, who was probably, I'm thinking about 5 years old at the time. So he was awesome with them, high fives, let him wear the belt, put the glasses on him, put the necklaces on him. And I'll never forget, we came back home, and Kai went into his room and found a jacket, like a sleeveless jacket. And he came out like it was a Brian Christopher Too Cool vest. And he got some of my wife's necklaces on, put those on because they would dangle and kind of hang down toward his belly button. And he got some sunglasses. And he started walking and dancing like he was Grandmaster Sexy. And I remember sending those pictures and videos to Brian, and I said, well, my son no longer wants to be like me. He wants to be like you. But the funniest part about that was when I first came to Memphis, I was 18. It was 1995. And at that point, you know, Brian Christopher and PG-13 were the hottest acts in the USWA Wrestling Company. And we did shows in Memphis, Louisville, Nashville, Evansville, all across the territory. And I remember being 18 and looking at Brian, because here comes this guy who was good-looking, great physique. The girls were going crazy, great matches, super athletic, worked out all the time. I wanted to be Brian Christopher, too. Even at the age of 18 in the business, I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool to be that guy?
Yeah.
And stand there on the stage and do the running man with I'm Too Sexy playing in the background and people going crazy. He really was a very special person. And this morning on the radio, I thought I was going to be able to get through a deal talking about him. It was about 8:45 this morning. And as soon as I started talking about it, the emotion hit me. Because I found some audio this morning that it was just Brian when he was really happy. And that kind of got to me.
And this is not just somebody that as a wrestling fan that you watch. This is a friend. This is somebody that you traveled with. This is somebody that you idolized. This is somebody that you literally wanted to be. This ended up becoming somebody that was family friends with you. I know just as a perspective of a fan who met him once, it's a sad day, but you're really helping me to kind of understand how that this has to be especially hard for you and for people that knew him.
And, me on a much lesser scale than his family and his childhood friends and all of that. But, I was thinking about one of my first days in Memphis, 1995. It's probably my second Saturday morning at Channel 5. Mm-hmm. We did a deal on television where Jimmy Valiant came out, and he poured a whole thing of flour on my head. And at this point, I had long blonde hair. I was wearing this suit with no shirt, and I was covered in flour. And I got back to the dressing room, and I'd been there. It's my second week. I didn't know where the shower was. So I'm asking where I go to shower, and I remember Brian looking at me and, dude, what do you mean? You can't shower? You can't shower that up? This is Memphis. And he was telling me that everybody watches Channel 5, and I had to live the gimmick is what he was telling me. So I couldn't shower that flour off. He told me I had to drive home like that. And since he was the son of the king, I took his word and drove home across Memphis, Tennessee, covered in flour. It was like, okay, here's another one. We do a match in the Mid-South Coliseum. They book it as a stretcher match, and it's me and a couple of partners, and it ended up being against Lawler, Dundee, and Brian and Sid Vicious, who's from Marion. Psycho Sid, right?
Yeah.
So the deal was, Sid gets a hold of me, and he gives me the first power bomb. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I survived. I'm not dead. He gives me the second power bomb. They win the match. The deal is they're going to carry me out on a stretcher. So I'm laid out in the middle of the ring at the Mid-South Coliseum, and my long hair is laying next to me. And I remember getting back to the dressing room, and there was a piece of gum in my hair.
Oh, no.
And I remember thinking, man, how'd this get there? And I'm asking, and of course, nobody wants to claim it because nobody did it. And Brian's telling me there must have been some gum on the ring mat. Because I was a new guy, so of course, they were going to mess with me a little bit.
Uh-huh.
That Saturday morning, I'm watching, we're standing back there at television. They're showing the clips from Monday night. They show Sid Powerbomb 1, Powerbomb 2. And then I see Brian on television go over and tap his dad and smile and spit his gum into my hair.
Oh, no.
I didn't do that. You must have fallen into the gum. We went to Evansville one time, and it was me and Doug Gilbert and Jamie Dundee, and we were running late to Evansville. And we stopped for whatever reason. Brian was always like this bigger-than-life kid, right? He loved fun stuff, and we stopped at this corn maze, and we got lost in the corn maze, and we were running late to the show, and I was nervous I was going to get fired, and they weren't going to fire Brian Christopher.
Sure.
So I remember we get done, and we're all out there around an area where you can launch balloons and shoot them at each other. But like the idea is they're supposed to arch up almost, like you're going to make a huge arching basketball shot. So the idea is you pull this thing back, you let it go, and the balloons are supposed to see if you can hit somebody. Well, of course we weren't doing a very good job at that. But right before we left, I look over, and guess who has the balloons and is targeting me?
Oh, no.
It's Brian.
It's Brian.
And Brian is pegging me with water balloons. I'm soaking wet, wearing shorts and a tank top, and we pull up at the Evansville Coliseum in Evansville, Indiana. And we're an hour late, and Randy Hale's just freaking out, wondering where I am. And I come in there soaking wet, and I have to go to the ring and wrestle in my street clothes, in flip-flops, soaking wet because of Brian Christopher.
That is the embodiment of the character that we've watched all these years. You told me when he played the character, he wasn't just turning on a character; it was an extension of who that he was, and it didn't turn off when he left the air.
No, he was such a fun person, and I've seen so many of our contemporaries who have said, Brian was. You can hear his laugh, you can hear the cackle, you can hear when he would tell you a story. That's kind of the reason I did one of those stories, kind of like I can imagine Brian doing it. Mm-hmm. He would get so animated, and you could feel everything that he was wanting to convey. And I think he was a storyteller both, on camera and off camera. I remember a night after the Downtown Barbecue Festival, he came out and we went over to one of the establishments, a group of people from the radio station, and everybody was looking at him like, oh my gosh, is this real? Because Brian was such a real-life character. And that's a Brian that I want to think of as we go throughout, the rest of time. I want to think about that Brian who made people laugh and who was a heck of a performer. I mean, he was so good at what he was doing at such a young age because people talked about people being naturals.
Right.
He truly was a natural. He grew up idolizing his dad, Jerry the King Lawler. And the thing about that is that he went out and learned the wrestling part on his own.
Yeah.
His dad was busy. He didn't have time to sit down. I'm sure he would help along the way. But as far as truly getting in the ring, the first place I lived in Memphis in 1995 was at a buddy's house. His name is David Webb, and he had a house in Frazier, which is part of Memphis. And what I was told was that back in the day, that's where Brian and Kevin Lawler would go when they wanted to practice wrestling, because David Webb had a ring in his backyard, and those two guys would travel over there and practice their wrestling moves, which ended up, being what was I guess why he was so advanced when he finally got into the ring on Channel 5.
Once he finally made it to the WWE, he also had, for especially somebody debuting, he had an incredible confidence that I would find to be incredibly difficult if I went from even regional television to being on a commentary table with Vince McMahon, which he was several times when he would join his father. In the 1997 time when he was feuding with Taka Michinoku, they started the light heavyweight division, and they needed a bad guy, a heel, somebody that would make the crowd really fall in love with an unknown from another country at that time, too, different time, so that was even less accepted. It's not like a Shinsuke Nakamura today. It was a different time. And Brian Christopher come out, he was as hated just about as you could get. And he would play with the crowd. He would lick his bicep, He would just interact with them and then get on the commentary and do a pretty good job. Of course, his father being who that he is, Jerry the King Lawler, it's impossible to meet the level of the best ever. So it had to always be difficult for somebody that had all the talent in the world, but also had this unfair burden of having to try to live up to who that his dad was, Yeah,
and I think that was something that I think he, when he was able to go to WWE and get away from Memphis, I think that's where we saw him really get out of that shadow. Because even there, they acknowledged it and they kind of joked about it, but it wasn't as direct. Even in Memphis, it wasn't direct until toward the end of the television run on Channel 5. It was one of those deals we kind of stayed away from. A lot of people knew because Brian had grown up around the area. But for Brian and for Kevin both, when I go back and I think about what I've heard about their childhood and all that, and back when Jerry Lawler was the biggest superstar on television, I've heard people, even a former coworker of yours, Mickey Ryan, who said that, in most cities, like in Dallas, the Cowboys were your home team or the Rangers were your home team. If you lived around here, Jerry Lawler was the home team. He was the guy that slayed the Giants, beat the bad guys. He was a real-life superhero. There were 3 television networks, and he was the superstar that was the traveling guy. This is before the days of Hulk Hogan being a star or Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was the local superhero. And those two guys, Brian and Kevin, both grew up. Their hero wasn't somebody that was on television like a Hulk Hogan or The Rock or something like that. Their hero was their dad.
Well, I think back to the AWA
cool.
days when he battled Kurt Hennig for the AWA Heavyweight Championship on, I think it was their Super Card pay-per-view effort, that they had tried to do. He was the main event talent for what was at the time the best effort to competition to WWE, and of course, Vince McMahon snatched him up in the early '90s and brought him in. I recall some conversations about how that, and this is off of our subject, which we're talking about Brian Christopher, but I can even recall how in the '80s there was a story of Jerry Lawler suing the WWE for using the term king on another wrestler, But my point, and yours too, obviously, in this is that Jerry the King Lawler, you can't get bigger than that. That was from a different era, different time, and he had a different nostalgic feel that you can't even achieve today. So it had to be hard, for the sons of Jerry the King Lawler, who showed incredible talent. In Brian's case, so talented, he went to WWE. Like you mentioned, that's where he broke out because it was the Grandmaster Sexay character that really took it to his own level, I think. And I think that's where he cemented himself, in wrestling fans forever.
And I think one of the deals that we can look at, and I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Lawler got Brian the job or whatever, but that's not the case. Brian got himself the job because Brian was super talented, and Jerry was Hall of Famer, to me, the greatest performer that there's ever been all around. I think Jerry Lawler is the best. But they didn't hire Brian Christopher because Jerry Lawler wanted them to. They hired Brian Christopher because he was really, really good. And he went up there and he achieved what they wanted him to, and then he ended up in that Too Cool gimmick, which was the one, like you said, that he's going to be known for. And last night, because I had a really tough day and I didn't know how to deal with it, and toward the end of the night, I was like, I want to watch some of Brian's fun stuff. And if you go to the WWE Network, there's his last appearance, which was an NXT match with him and Scotty 2 Hotty against the Ascension. It was a surprise deal. But I remembered this tag match. It was a 10-man tag from 2000, and I can give you the exact episode. It was February 7th, 2000, and it was The Rock, Cactus Jack, and Too Cool, which was Brian, Scotty 2 Hotty, and Rikishi. And they wrestled Benoit, Malenko, Perry Saturn, Triple H, and X-Pac.
Wow.
And that crowd, when you go back to, you remember the Attitude Era, how red hot things were in the Attitude Era.
Mm-hmm.
That crowd was so hot in Dallas that it made everything they did so much better. So if you're a wrestling fan and you have the WWE Network, it's probably on YouTube as well. It's the main event, February 7th, 2009. And it was really a really special match. And at the end of it, and I'd forgotten about it, I just wanted to see the reaction to everything Too Cool was doing. But at the end of it, another friend of mine who has since passed away, Paul Bearer, makes a big return. So that was an extra part of the emotion at the end of the night that I wasn't ready for.
Before you and I ever knew each other, and I think we've talked about this before, but I had met him through the internet during an internet radio show. I had a chance to interview him on a weekly basis. He would come on the show as a weekly guest for something like 2 or 3 months. He even registered on our website as Percy Pringle the Third, and gosh, he was an incredible human being. Was Percy, and so I feel that.
To me, he was the first wrestling personality whose phone number I had. And I remember thinking that was the coolest thing. I'll never forget that. It was Percy Pringle first, who ended up being Paul Bearer, and then General Skandar Akbar, both who are now gone. But I think back on those times and really fondly. And every once in a while, you get that random message from Percy. Hey kid, because to a lot of these guys, I'm still the kid, even though I'm 41. Hey kid, how's it going? How's radio? How's Arkansas? Just really special. I have something, and this is something that I was going to surprise you with.
Yeah.
And you don't. It's almost funny because I feel like people, when they hear me say, "Oh, he's going to try to surprise them," it sounds kind of bogus, like we put this together. But literally, you have no idea what I'm about to play.
I have no idea. Now, we talked about before we went on, and we decided whatever you played, I would learn about while we were live.
So I was going through at one point I was down the hall on our sister station, Kiss FM, and on that station we had done an interview with Brian, and he recorded some stuff about an event, and he sent me some music, and I was going through everything he sent me, and I found this. Are you ready for it?
I think I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm probably going to start laughing knowing Brian. So
you will, because it's about you.
What?
See if you remember this. This is Grandmaster Sexay, Brian Christopher, and I just want all you listeners out there to know that Stan Morris is Andre the Giant and the Fabulous Moolah's love child.
I had no idea this existed, Brandon.
Isn't that crazy? I don't know why we had that. I don't know if I can't remember the situation, but I remember we were excited to interview Brian at that point. And I couldn't even tell you why I had that audio.
Oh my gosh. You're going to have to send that to me in a clean form. Oh my gosh. I'm sitting here. I can't get my smile. As Jerry Lawler once said, I'm going to have my smile surgically removed.
I'm telling you, that's the audio this morning that after all the sadness brought a lot of happiness to me. Can I play one more thing for you?
Please do. At this point, it's you've got the whole platform is yours.
Brian had recorded some songs. He had a friend in Jackson, Tennessee, and they were recording some kind of parody stuff, and he wanted me to play it on the radio, and we did before his appearances and stuff like that. Here's his version of the Right Said Fred song, I'm Too Sexy. He recorded I'm Too Sexy. And I'll play about a minute of it for you if we have time.
We do.
And it's wrestling related, and it's Brian Christopher.
Let's hear it. It sounds great.
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love, love's going to leave me. So that's Brian, and I can picture him smiling in a recording studio somewhere, loving the fact that he's getting to do some music. You're going to get a kick out of the lyrics. Here they come here in a second. I'm too sexy for some tights, too sexy for some tights, some spandex. You know I'm right. And I'm too sexy for Las Vegas, too sexy for Las Vegas. Did you know me from Memphis? And I'm too sexy for some country, too sexy for some country. You'll never see me line dancing. Yeah, off the top rope, yeah, I fly like a bird off the top rope. Anyway, there were multiple songs he had sent me. And
that is awesome.
Out of all the sadness, man, that was the deal that brought me a lot of happiness today, to hear Brian so happy. And I remember that phone call. Man, you gotta play my song. You gotta play my song on the radio. It's good, man. I'm telling you, it's good. What do you think?
It actually really was good when you compare it. Like it doesn't sound at all different from the actual song.
No, he's such a special human being, and I think, for me, I want to remember him as that guy that would make you laugh and was a character and entertained so many people for so long, and for his family. Who I've reached out to directly, but just, thoughts to all of them as they go through what is a super tough time in their lives. And appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here with your audience and share some of these stories.
Appreciate you sharing the stories with us. And before I even say anything else, I obviously am thinking of Jerry the King Lawler and his family. I'm also thinking of you and yours, because I know this was somebody that, meant a lot to you and meant a lot to your family. I mean, I'm looking one more time at the photo of him and Kai, and it's such a genuine smile. Kids can't fake happiness, and it's obvious how happy Kai is being next to him holding this picture, And, so
I can tell you that if I ask Kai to take a picture with most people, I don't want to take a picture, Dad. Not another picture, Dad. But with Brian, he saw him as he was, and that's a larger-than-life character who walked into Dairy Queen and won over everybody that was there.
I think he won everybody over that had a chance to meet him, and as we're remembering him here today, wanted to remind people that this man had an incredible talent that few could ever achieve. He had success. He was a world champion in the WWE as the tag team champions. He was part of the Attitude Era, tag teamed with The Rock and Cactus Jack as one of his final matches in WWE. You were talking about there. The man had a period where he wrestled in the very first and only light heavyweight championship tournament in the WWE. He was on television, and if you just imagine how many millions of dollars of television time he had in the advertising sense, it for a period of time surpassed his father even during that time. And also, it's worth noting, he and correct me if I'm wrong, but of the two, he would be the only Lawler to have won a championship in the WWE. Is that right?
That is correct.
I never thought about that.
And that's wild. That really is wild. He was a special person. He really was. And just looking back at these pictures, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Let's remember him with the happiness, and remember that smile, because the one thing you see in all those pictures is that huge smile on Brian Christopher.
It's the truth. And from that perspective, being the only Lawler to be a champion in the WWE, but somebody that here in Northeast Arkansas that we had a chance to know and get to know, and he brought a lot of winning smiles to people, just like the one we're looking at there. Very sad day, especially considering the circumstances, but we're glad to have remembered Brian Christopher here with you today. Brandon, thanks for joining us, okay?
Thanks for having me, Stan. I appreciate it.
Haley Norris, realtor.
No.
Should I make my hair go like this? Whether you need to buy, sell, or lease. Haley, can I use my hands, or is that where are my hands? Where do they go?
Just say-
Haley.
Just like Haley.
Whether you need my expertise. Haley Norris, realtor, or even do a commercial lease. Haley Norris, realtor. Should I say Remax Real Estate Center or no? Is that too salesy?
No, that's good.
My average days on market is just 50 days. You need my expertise, and that means I'm putting more money back in your pocket.
Family Medical Clinic of Walnut Ridge and Bono are your neighborhood healthcare providers, and we're now accepting new patients. We know you have a tight schedule, so we're here 6 days a week at both locations from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Walk-ins are welcome. In Walnut Ridge, stop by 1045 West Main Street or call us to make an appointment, 886-8300. In Bono, we're on Highway 63 North or call 930-9990. Walnut Ridge Family Medical Clinic and Bono Family Medical Clinic, here for you when you need us.
Let's take a look at your New Wave Wireless forecast now. Home of the $49 iPhone screen repair. Also some shower and thunderstorms popping up in Jonesboro right now. Rainfall just getting set to begin. In fact, let's take a live look at the radar and show you what that looks like before we actually delve into the 5-day forecast here. A few light showers rolling into Northeast Arkansas right now. Not anything to really be concerned about. We're definitely watching the stuff that's rolling into southwest Missouri at the moment. We're going to keep a close eye on that, but at the moment, it doesn't look like that's going to come anywhere near us here in NEA. Let's look at your 5-day forecast now. Home of the $49 iPhone screen repair is New Wave Wireless. They're bringing you this forecast at the moment. Here it is. It's going to have a chance for shower and thunderstorm activity tonight. The forecast does, with cloudy skies this evening, a low around 69. For your Tuesday, as we begin the week with a few more shower and thunderstorm possibilities, a 20% chance of that with partly sunny skies and a high around 84. But the sunshine is out, and it is abound, at least for the next several days. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, expect to see shower and thunderstorm chances gone. They're gone from the forecast, it looks like, for the next several days, right? But you do have the temperatures going up a little bit, 88, 89, and 90 as we roll into the weekend. At the moment right now in Jonesboro, it's 80 degrees, partly cloudy skies, and as I mentioned, you probably got a little bit of that rainfall that is getting ready to begin in your neighborhood in Jonesboro, if it has not already. The good news is it doesn't look like any thunderstorms are rolling in with it. Maybe a few rumbles of thunder, but nothing too severe with at least this round. As a special thank you to everybody for following NEA Report and for watching the show today, I'm going to share a way to save a little bit of cash with you. This is really going to work, too. If you have Suddenlink, at least, it's really going to work, but it might just work with any cable, satellite service provider, maybe even some other service providers as well. If you're sick of that bill that goes up and up and up, I've got a way for you to make it go down, finally. If you're looking for all of this in an easy-to-read place, by the way, it's neareport.com/money, and you can see all of the recent money articles. This is a tip to save on your Suddenlink bill. Here's how to do it. I'm talking about maybe up to $55, as much as people have told me. I've had a few people comment this time they got $25, $30 a month, but that's a month, and that really adds up for, a 12-month period. You're talking about $350 maybe. So call their customer service line first. It's the VIP line that I have on the article you can call. And then explain that you've not repackaged in over a year. That's the key word. Tell them you got to repackage your stuff. Tell them that you got to get a little bit of savings in on that. Okay, maybe you don't talk like that, but tell them you got to repackage your stuff. Repackage the key word. The customer service rep's either going to help you themselves or transfer you to the retention department. And if you don't get lucky and they're kind of we'll just hang up and call back. Right. And like I said, if you're not having any luck, ask for the retention department and then let us know in the comments how much you saved. We want to know because this actually works. And I read a comment a moment ago. Somebody saved $25. As I mentioned, I did it. The first time I did it, I saved something like $65. It was incredible. It starts going up after a full year, almost exactly to the day is when it will start going up. So call back and repackage every year. Sometimes you can even get a higher internet speed for a lower price because they have a certain package deal going on. I'm not even joking right now. I may have just saved you a ton of money. And if I did, maybe you could be cool and go to our Patreon page and throw a little bit back at us. How about that? Just about to be the first of the month, so here's a cool time to remind you that for those who back us on Patreon, I'm going to be producing a custom show, a special show. In fact, just announcing the show caused a bunch of controversy. It was not intended to, but I'm going to be telling you what it's like to work with all of the different news media folks across Northeast Arkansas, including Brandon Baxter, who I had on the show today, but I'll give you a little bit of a hint. I've got a lot of good stories about him. He is a nice guy. I've got some good stories about some cool people. Diana Davis, how nice is she? It might blow your mind how nice she really is. But then there's some times we had near fisticuffs with a few people. We'll talk about that too. But you got to be a Patreon backer to find this content. And I'm going to be recording the show very soon and posting it after the first of the month into August. You'll have this show. And then I'm going to do one show a month just for Patreon backers and of a similar nature. We'll call it Taking the Gloves Off or something like that. So anyway, patreon.com/NEA Report if you want to get in on that. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to Brandon Baxter for joining us today and talking about his friend and somebody that I always admired, had a chance to meet as well. Appreciate everybody who sent along kind messages about that segment, and also our thoughts and condolences with the Lawler family and with anybody that knew Brian Lawler. Thank you to everybody for watching us. We're back tomorrow with more news from Northeast Arkansas, looking at covering the Sharp County incident tomorrow in greater detail as we have a number of new developments about that. We felt like it was enough to warrant another special show. We won't lock that into the plan, so to speak, because breaking news changes everything. However, expect to see us back here tomorrow, no matter what, 3 p.m. with more news from Northeast Arkansas. I'm Stan Morris, and now you're up to date from NEA Report. Have a great night.